And welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, July the 25th. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Baker. Here. Galloway.
Here.
Lennon.
Here.
Piana. Yes. Mayor Coulter.
Yes, everyone is here. Thank you very much. Our first order of business would be the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? And let me suggest a couple, if I may. I would like to add presentation B, which is, I'll just call City Manager, and presentation C, DTE Energy. If somebody would make a motion and or change anything else you have on.
I would move to approve the agenda as amended by the mayor.
Support.
Any other discussion about the agenda? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Councilmembers Baker.
Yes.
Galloway.
Yes.
Lennon.
Yes.
Piana. Yes. Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is approved. Our first order of business then would be a presentation by the Downtown Development Authority, and I see Christina here this evening. Hi, Christina.
I have to possibly adjust. Good evening, Council. Christina Shepard, DCS Ferndale DDA Executive Director. I'm here tonight without a slideshow presentation, knowing that you guys have a lot of other things to discuss. But I did want to give you a recap on some of the things that are happening in the downtown area. First off, at the end of June, we held our Visioning Open House, which I know a number of you attended. And it was greatly attended. We had over 60 attendees that discussed what's working, what's not working within the downtown area. Also, what would we like to see in the future? And we'll be taking those visions and dreams and putting them to a physical plan. And there'll be some of the details will be coming out in the next couple weeks, so make sure to check our website, which is downtownferndale.com, as well as we'll be disseminating information over the next couple months regarding all of that. So there's a lot more to come with that. Coming up this week, we have a very busy week actually. We have a number of events. First is FernNet, which is our monthly networking opportunity for businesses in the area. It's on Wednesday, July 27th at 9 a.m. at Michigan Works Building, which is located at 713 East 9 Mile Road. There's a lot of opportunities that Michigan Works provides. So we actually encourage more than just business owners to come out and attend, learn a little bit about how you can be retrained to get into the workforce, as well as training yourself as a business owner to be more productive and more efficient within your workplace. On Friday, July 29th, is our 15th annual Ferndale Pub Crawl, which I'm sure someone else in the audience behind me will be mentioning this as well. But I will put up the poster. It is here. It starts at Boogie Fever. This is a great tradition, raises a good amount of money for some local charities. So I really hope that everybody comes out. You get to see downtown Ferndale on foot. And really get to enjoy our entire character of people and places. On Saturday, the day after, July 30th, is from 12 to 8 p.m. is the Pig and Whiskey, which is a first-time event. It'll be on East Troy Street here, and there will be music that will begin at 5 p.m. This is a new event which will feature obviously a pig roast and other samplings of whiskeys for people to participate in. On Monday, August 1st, at 6 p.m., we'll be hosting the Ferndale DDA Appreciation Party. So this is an annual party that we hold to award some of the best in downtown Ferndale. So we hope that business owners as well as council members will attend. It's always a nice event. So 6 p.m. at Rosie O'Grady's. A couple updates on projects that we're working on. One is our wayfinding program. You'll see that we'll be completing the sign footings this week, which means concrete work, and receiving inspections by both the building department and our engineers. as well as then next week, hopefully you'll see the final electrical signs being attached. The footings and electrical work's already been in place. It's just waiting for the actual sign attachment. So hopefully that will complete that part of our project. So
Is that the end? Would that complete the entire project?
just about. We have our virtual tours that we have to complete over the next month. So that's the last part that will make it whole for the Preserve America grant that we have. So the next things that you'll actually see coming down the road, hopefully, in an effort to become more complete streets-oriented, you'll be able to both walk and bike downtown and park your bike on street. So we are working with the police department, also with DPW and the Community and Economic Development Department to actually place bike racks or bike corrals on street in a parking space. And we have met with TIA just actually this past week, and they reviewed some of the samples that we've looked into across the U.S., and they really liked the one from Portland, Oregon. So we're going to be emulating ours after that. We're making a couple little adjustments to the design modifications and submitting those this week, hopefully, and then hopefully we can proceed with a traffic control order on a temporary basis, but then a resolution would be coming to council hopefully in the next meeting. So that would be really great to see. We would like to see that throughout our downtown. But this would be a test pilot location, which would be in front of Western Market. And then, and last but not least, by any means, but one of the other big projects that we're working on now that the City Council has approved this is Park Mobile. Pretty soon, people will be able to pay for parking with their credit card via phone. And it's a pay-by-phone system, and drivers can actually go online either from their computer or from their smartphone to register, and it's a one-time registration. So actually where Park Mobile is used anywhere throughout the United States, which there are 100 major cities that are using it, you'll be able to use it in any of those cities once you're registered once. And you'll be able to pull up to a parking space, look at your zone area and your number, parking space number, tap that in and enter in how much time you would like to stay there, and that is all to your transactions until you return to your card and close out your transaction if you'd like. Otherwise, you can just let it lapse out. There'll be a lot more information that will be coming on this. We'll be doing major education over a month period in September. We'll be doing a soft launch at the beginning of September, and a more official launch on September 16th is our game plan. Try to get it up and running before DIY and the Ferndale Funky Art Fair. That way we can educate thousands of people who are coming into our city as to how to utilize this system. So hopefully you'll see more from us pretty soon.
And one of the nice things about that, if I understood what you said, is you won't pay for more than you use. You could stop your time and then not
Right,
overpay.
exactly.
Great feature. Look forward to that.
Yes, us too.
Any questions of Christina tonight? Thank you as always.
Great, thanks.
All right. Presentation B, I have mysteriously put on the agenda as city manager. January seems like a long time ago now, but it was really only 7 months ago. And the city was faced with a whole bunch of stuff going on, including the beginning of budget season, as you remember, and a $2 million deficit that you were all facing. I wasn't here. And the loss of 2 key personnel. The city manager had announced that he was leaving for Birmingham, and the mayor was off to Oakland County, and you guys had a lot on your plate, and so you, I think, wisely made the decision that you needed some interim help until we hired a new city manager. And that's what you did, and that's the gentleman at the end of the table that everybody knows is Mark Wallenweber, who has done way more than just keep the place running for the new city manager. Mark, your leadership and your experience and your knowledge of city government has been so useful, not only in adopting I was going to say the budget, but you really adopted 2 budgets because we had one if Headley passed and one if it didn't. And frankly, you did 4 because I made you do a 2-year budget. So you did 2 2-year budgets, but a host of other issues like negotiating and settling union contracts, discussions with neighboring communities, all sorts of stuff. Your leadership has been much appreciated. For those that don't know, this is Mark's last meeting. His last day of work is Thursday because April McGrath will be our permanent city manager next Monday. But Mark, we couldn't let you go without wishing you well, and we have a few things for you because that's just what we do. So the first one is in here. And how cool is this? So we had a shirt for you, city manager, city of Ferndale. Doesn't fit me, but I think it's going to fit you better. So that's our first gift to you. Thank you, sir. I think someone in the back of the room, our manager of the Dream Cruise, also has something for you. Look at that. The official 2011 Dream Cruise poster, framed for you, Mark. And I believe our city's largest employer also has something for you.
Yes, Jack and Annette Aronson, owner of Garden Fresh Salsa, want to send their thanks to you for everything you did to them. They're in the process of buying property and building buildings, and they needed a lot of help, a lot of work, and they cannot make it tonight. But they sent this. They said you probably will not wear this right now. It's a sweatshirt. Oh, thank you. Okay, thanks. I'll send it.
So, Mark, before I give you a chance to say just a few words, I'd like to give council or Sherilyn or Dan a chance to just express anything you would like to say on this Mark's last day with us.
Where do you want to start?
Well,
Just raise your hand or
I'll say something. Mark, when you came in here, you hit the ground running. And what Dave said earlier about your knowledge of government and everything, yeah, that applies. But how you blended in with city staff, how you related to the staff, the employees, the administration, speaks highly of your character and your integrity. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Kate.
I think Melanie has to go last because she knows him best. But Mark, I can't tell you how it felt to have an amazing sense of calm sort of settle over me as I got to know you and realized that the city was in very, very capable hands. This is someone with over 30 years of experience running cities just like Ferndale, of the same size in our neighborhood. He knows everyone. Whenever anything went awry, he made a phone call. It was wonderful working with you, and I am sure our paths will cross again in the future. And thank you for everything and for putting our minds at ease and helping us move forward.
Mark, I've worked with 4 city managers now and certainly interacted with a whole host of others. And I got to say, I really appreciate your professionalism and being able to not only come in and take care of problems, but assess problems proactively, recognize when things were going to come up, and really, by anticipating them, making the outcomes better for the city of Ferndale. It's just been an amazing contribution to the life of the city. And, you know, I think a lot of us up here were really wondering in January and February, you know, what the future of the city of Ferndale was going to be and whether we were going to pass a millage, whether we would continue to have a police and fire department of the type that we've come to expect. And I think, you know, you moved in at perhaps, you know, in some ways the darkest hour of Ferndale without real leadership, and took control and made good things happen. And we thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Well, I have the same sentiments as everybody has said already, and I just think, just really mentioned the sense of calm that Kate talked about. Really kind of stress-free in terms of wondering how the daily operations of the city were going, how they were going to function with an interim city manager. And for that, I'm very thankful that your expertise and your deep knowledge of city management really came to play in helping us over some of our biggest challenges that seem to occur all at once. I
send you off on your retirement, maybe for another 6 months until you're another interim city manager for another city. We welcome you to Ferndale anytime.
Thank you.
There's also a glowing proclamation that we had written for you that I won't read because I won't embarrass you, but I'll give it to you because it's very nice. But let me just say, probably the greatest compliment that I've heard is people say, can't we just get him to be the permanent city manager? Can't we just keep him? And I know that you're, getting close to the end of a very long career and you weren't interested in that, but that is our genuine feelings towards you, Mark. And I'll pass this down to you and give you an opportunity to say anything you'd like.
Well, thank you all. I was going to say something when it's my turn later at the meeting, but I do want to thank you. Both the council I found to be wonderful to work with. The citizens are blessed with creative and caring elected officials, a wonderful staff. I know I've said that several times, but they welcomed me, listened to all of my ideas, provided input into it, and I never felt that they weren't doing their best work. And a perfect example is, with this last crisis, I unfortunately was gone, and people stepped right up, and the city did the best that it could with those circumstances. I know you'll talk about that. But I thank the council for the opportunity to work here. It was fun most of the time, except for some of the budget, but it was great fun. You have a wonderful staff. You have caring and committed people in the community as well, and I'll be back for many of the activities. I am going out of town. I'm glad April was able to come the 1st of August because I leave the 2nd of August for vacation. I'm sorry we don't have some overlap time, but she's asked me to come back for lunch, and she'll have a list. And I'll speak about this later, but we have a project potentially working closely with the City of Huntington Woods that April, Alex, and I will get together when I first come back and talk about that. And I think that will result in a better working relationship for the City of Ferndale with the City of Huntington Woods, which, of course, I was there 20-some years ago, and many of the same elected officials that you know are still there, and wonderful community to work with and stuff. But I've been very appreciative. I will have in the Thursday packet for each of you a thank you note and my personal appreciation and you'll see me at events because I'm looking forward to the ice show. I might be able to come. The pub crawl is one of my favorites, but I don't know if I'll make it this time. I got to get packed for Peru, where we're going to Machu Picchu and some others, leaving next Tuesday, so early. But thank you all for the cooperation, and the staff and the residents are blessed with wonderful elected officials, a good staff that just step in and take care of things, and it's deserved because this is a fine community with many fine people that live here, and many of which the businesses, the folks that we've met with and working on little projects for them are just been great to deal with. So thank you all, too.
All right, our next order of business is what I've simply called DTE Energy. Let me just tee this up, not that people don't realize what's going on. But the first thing I want to say is I want to thank the residents and the business owners of Ferndale for their patience during the heat wave and the power outage that began last Wednesday in our city and lasted through Saturday morning. I don't think, even if you didn't lose power very often, and most of you did, there wasn't a business or a resident that wasn't inconvenienced in some way by this power outage. I know it was frustrating, I know it was tiring, I know it was challenging. And yet, I also think it brought out the best in our city. You know, I saw neighbors looking after neighbors, people volunteering at our cooling center, people helping out. I mean, once again, I am just proud to be from this city because I do think in challenging times we rise to the occasion, and we did. So later in Call to Council, I'm going to specifically thank some people by name because it just would be negligent not to, but I'm not going to do that now. For now, I want to do a couple of things. First of all, I think as a city we need to sort of review two things. Number one, as a city response, as a city of Ferndale response, what did we do right in this crisis? and where are there opportunities for improvement. And I want the residents to know that we've already begun as a city to look at those things. Starting tomorrow, Mark is going to lead a staff discussion with the department heads to answer those two questions. Because as we look at, and I think a lot of things went right, frankly, and I think that list will be bigger than the other list. But there will be changes, there will be some changes that could happen and room for opportunities to do better. And we'll build those into our outcomes and objectives so we make sure that we get those done the next time that we have a crisis. By the way, in call to audience, you are also welcome to tell us what you think the city did right and did wrong during the last week, and we'd appreciate that as well. And April, by the way, is going to continue that process when she comes on board. So that's one thing we need to do. But the second thing we need to do is, frankly, resolve and talk to our power company, the folks at DTE, to ask them a couple questions, number one of which is, what the heck happened, right? We're not electrical engineers up here, so the first question obviously is, what happened? And then maybe more importantly, what can we do to, I don't want to say prevent because there's no guarantees, but what can we do to minimize the chance that something like that will happen again? So in order to get that conversation started, certainly the first part of it of what happened, I've invited some folks here from DTE, but I want you to know that there's a second piece to this, which is they are doing an internal review of this as well, and that's not complete. But they have agreed to work with the city and to share with the city a report when that is done to let us know what they found and what changes, if any, they think need to happen and that sort of thing. So that will be in the future. That's not done yet. But the first part of it is they're here tonight to address us, to answer that question of what the heck happened and what are we going to do going forward. So Mike Polchowski, who is I don't know your title exactly. Regional Manager, Corporate and Government Affairs is here, and I know he's brought Carol McNeil, who's more of an operations guy who could answer specific questions, and Madeline Williams is also here from DTE. So they are here. I want them to give a presentation, and then let me just tell you how this will work, I hope. They're going to give a presentation, answer those questions that I just mentioned, and then we'll go to call to audience, and they've agreed to stay for that as well. Now, as you know, call to audience is your opportunity to talk, so it's not a debate, but they've agreed to stay because if you have specific questions about anything, they're here to answer those, not to debate you or not to engage in that, but to answer any specific questions that residents might have about what happened during this outage. So with that, Mike, and I don't know who else you want to bring up,
I'll go ahead and
welcome
start off,
to Ferndale again.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Coulter, and thank you for the introduction. Let me just make one comment, though, in case it didn't come across clearly on the microphone. My last name is Palchevsko.
Oh, what did I say?
Yeah, so yeah.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Sorry, Mike.
Just
I
want to make
apologize.
sure.
And I've known you for many years, but it's the heat, I guess.
With that, I just want to first of all say thank you very much for the support last week as we were going through this situation. I also want to thank Fire Chief Sullivan, Police Chief Collins, members of the city staff, primarily DPW Director Byron Fidaites, for the support and the accessibility they provided us. As this situation was evolving as we went through the week, we had to make contact with folks like yourself at very much non-business hours. So I want to say thank you for being accessible at those different times so we could talk to you, provide information, and work through this. As you indicated, I'm joined tonight by Carl McNeil. Carl is a senior engineer with us at DTE. He's an engineer who's responsible for the distribution system here in Ferndale and the surrounding areas. As you indicated, we're here tonight. I don't have a slideshow. We do have one big poster if we need it. But just to kind of give you a little background on what took place last week. And before I get into that, let me also add, like you did, my appreciation to the residents and businesses here in Ferndale. We at DTE very much respect and sympathize with what they endured last week during this extreme heat. And we too very much appreciate their patience as we work through this. And I also need to mention that we did have some folks in Pleasant Ridge and some customers in the eastern edge of Oak Park that were also impacted by this. So I would just like to publicly say, again, we appreciate what they endured also. With that as a introduction, As you indicated, Wednesday the 20th at about 5:30, we had a situation at the Ferndale substation here on 9 Mile Road in Dover, where one of the two transformers serving customers in the central and south central part of Ferndale experienced some trouble. It basically kicked off, which resulted in a power outage to some customers here in the community. We went out and we manually transferred the load to the one remaining transformer. But as you can well understand, with the high energy usage, the high heat, and so on, it presented an issue for us, and we were sort of in a tenuous situation during that time. What we did was we then conducted some tests on the transformer that had been knocked off to try to determine what the problem was and what steps we could take to bring that back online. As we were going through those tests and we were into the day on Thursday, the test continued, and then of course as we got into the day on the evening on Thursday, about 10:25 p.m. Thursday night, the entire substation shut down. All 6 circuits that come out of the substation, which serve approximately 6,000 customers in the community, shut down when we had a cable failure on one of the primary feeds into the substation, which begins over at the Lincoln station in Royal Oak, over off of Lincoln and Troy. The underground line, 24,000 volt line, comes out of that facility, goes over to Main Street, and then comes down Main Street before it works its way over here to Ferndale. Over there in the area of Main and Harrison, we had the failure. As we were going through the day on Friday, there were a team of DTE people, officials and engineers that were trying to determine what steps we could take to deal with that situation. They looked at different possibilities, different things we could do, but when it came down to it, a decision was made that the quickest way to take care of that problem and get everybody back in service was to, unfortunately, shut everybody down for a brief period of time. That's when I contacted you, Mayor Coulter, gave you a heads up that we needed to have further conversation. That was followed by a conference call with the fire chief, the police chief herself, and some of us at DTE to explain to you the dilemma we were in and the situation we had to deal with. From that point on, then we rolled out our plan, which included interrupting everybody out of that substation at about 2:30 in the morning, Saturday morning. As we got into the early hours of Saturday, we're able to start bringing customers back up and begin serving load again. And then as we went through Saturday, that's when we made the announcement that with the high heat, the high electrical usage, we needed to be careful. We asked residents and business people to try to manage their electrical load. And then Saturday night, we were able to announce that we had returned the Ferndale substation to its normal configuration and able to carry the load. So that, in a brief outline, is the steps that we went through. Again, as you indicated, we do plan to do a after-action review, do a total analysis of what happened, what occurred, and what steps we need to take to obviously seriously reduce the chance of something like this happening again. We're also going to take a look at our overall service out of that substation, make sure that the customers who deserve a very high level of service are getting what they deserve, and if there are some other changes we need to make at the substation, we'll look at doing those kind of things. And at this point, that's basically how I wanted to start
So
out.
are there questions of council for Mike?
Yeah.
Melanie.
Can you explain the age of the transformer on 9 Mile in Livernois? There's perceptions that our electrical infrastructure at that spot is outdated and neglected.
Let me say a couple of things, and then I'll let Carl speak to that too. But in general, we do have a regular maintenance program at the substation. We're constantly doing maintenance projects, taking a look at the reliability of the substation equipment and trying to be proactive, trying to determine if there are some situations that we need to take care of prior to a big outage occurring and so on. So as a regular part of our routines, we are constantly checking that equipment and so on. Carl, I don't know if you'd like to say something about the equipment at the Ferndale substation?
As far as transformers go, visual checks are done every time there's a substation operator at the station, and there's gas tests that indicate the condition of the oil in the transformer on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
But wait, well, before you go, yeah, first of all, move the mic up. That was a little hard to hear that. But specifically to the age, how old is it? Is it old compared to other transformers? Is it, what?
Most substation equipment has a life of 30 to 40 years. I'm not sure what the life of, what the age of this transformer is.
Just to follow up on that, when we had the fire at that substation that was pretty significant about, what was it, 8 years ago? Were those transformers replaced, or were they repaired, or, you know, what was the remedial action taken after that fire relative to the transformers?
I'm not sure. I'm not even sure that the fire was in the same location as the transformer. So
it was. Yeah.
Lightning hit it. It was spectacular.
That's something.
My house was out for a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Well, indeed, the substation itself was out for a period of days. But again, as far as which transformer was impacted and what happened as a result of that, I'll have to go back, and Carl and I'll go back and look at the, again, the after-action review that took place after that situation, and we'll report back.
Melanie, any other questions?
Yeah, I was wondering what the capacity is now. Do we have enough capacity there, since it seems like we had an increase in usage and due to the heat and, you know, scientists predict we're going to be even warmer in the ensuing years, and I was wondering, do we have enough capacity there to handle another situation where we have high heat?
the load has been fairly stagnant for the last 4 or 5 years, with virtually no load growth, but it would have been up a bit, I'm sure, during this heat. There is sufficient capacity to carry all the load at Ferndale with some excess capacity right now.
I just got a quick question. What's our status right now? Because before I left to come up here for the meeting, I got a call from a resident of Southwest again, over on the Dales, and they were in a brownout with lights flickering.
I can kind of answer that. I live in the Dales, and apparently there was another electrical outage last night that was different and separate from the transformer issue on 9 Mile, and it was a down power line in Alberta. So that was also ongoing, and I think some people have some questions here tonight about that particular incident.
Well, but what's our status right now, as far as the substation goes?
The substation is in its normal configuration, and we are... It's in its normal configuration, and we are confident that it's operating in its normal...
Okay, and I got a slew of questions, but I know you're doing an internal audit, so we'll wait for you when you come back, or I'll wait at least, but... So you have full capacity there right now?
Yes.
The residents do not have to worry?
They do not have to monitor their load. We have enough capacity.
And you're not doing any brownouts in the city?
Well, what we're going to do is, as we go through the week, you know, it's our expectation that there will not be any, but we'll definitely be keeping an eye on things.
Find out.
Ferndale is definitely at, you know, right up at the top of our situations that we're monitoring very closely. Again, we know what you folks endured last week, and we are paying very close attention, especially as we get into this week with high heat anticipated later in the week.
Okay.
Other questions?
Oh, I've got a few. It was my understanding that the age of the transformers or the type of transformers was so either old or so unusual that DTE didn't stock those, didn't have backups readily available, and that you had to cannibalize a different substation somewhere across the state to bring that equipment into Ferndale. Is that accurate, or are these in fact things that are sitting in a warehouse somewhere waiting to be dropped into Ferndale on a moment's notice?
There's all different sizes and voltages of transformers. I'm not sure about the backup, quantities of backups for these particular transformers, but I know DTE does stock replacement transformers, but I'm not sure on these particular sizes.
All right. Well, I think I got that report from the Chief of Police that DTE didn't have any of these in place. When we have an incident like this, are there upgrades to bring, you know, the top equipment or you know, the new current standard equipment into a city, or do we simply replace the equipment that failed with identical equipment and then put the substation back on regular, you replacement schedule.
Let me say one thing if I could, and then if Carl's got something. On July 12th, we had an outage at what's called the Hazel Park substation, 9 Mile in Martin. Feeds a majority of customers in Hazel Park, but does feed a large number of customers in your community. When that transformer failed over there, as part of the process to upgrade it, we were actually doing some other upgrades in that substation as a part of that project. So in response to your question, when the opportunity presents itself, we do make an effort to upgrade things when we're making a replacement like this. In this particular case at Ferndale Substation, Carl, I don't know if you had anything to add.
Before a transformer would be placed back in service, it would be tested to make sure that it was ready for service. So we would be sure that it was in good shape before we re-energized it.
Okay, but this substation dates, it's a fairly old substation, correct? I mean, what era is the equipment that's in there? Is it 1950s technology? Is it 1970s? Or does transformer technology just not change and we have the same stuff we had in the 30s?
Not too much other than voltage regulators, but the basic transformer itself is fairly similar. There have been some design changes over the years, but transformers are a long life item, and the building itself is old, but a lot of the equipment may have been updated since the original equipment was put in service.
On that point, though, the cable that had the problem, was that old, or that was just or do you think that was an overheated?
That cable has been in, was been in since 1969, but the failure that happened this past week was the very first time that cable has failed. So it was just unfortunate that it happened to be on such a hot day, but that cable has been very, very reliable. Again, with our maintenance programs and the different types of maintenance activities we undertake, we do have an eye towards making sure, even if it might look old on the calendar, we want to make absolutely sure that it's operating in an efficient manner and so on. So we keep that in mind.
Yeah, the report I got was from the police chief on July 21st, who indicated that one of the 2 transformers is out of service and cannot be repaired. DTA does not have compatible replacement in reserve. Apparently the configuration of this transformer is unique. What does configuration of a transformer mean?
Before I have Carl respond to that, let me just say, initially at the Ferndale substation, we thought the problem was with the transformer, but as time went on, we found that the problem was actually at the cable, the main 24,000 volt cable, which caused the transformer to shut off. Anything else on that?
Yes, there was ground fault detector potential transformers that gave us some information that led us to believe that the transformer had failed, but in fact it hadn't.
And when we say configuration, does that have to do with the transformer itself or how it's wired to the grid?
I mean different things.
Well, if my police chief wrote in that the configuration of the transformer was unique, causing it to have delayed replacement times, what would you interpret that to mean?
I don't know how to interpret that. You would have to be more specific.
And I'm not exactly sure where that came from. Again, when we complete our after-action review and analysis, I'll make sure that very question is addressed as part of that analysis.
I guess what we'd like to have in place is certainly things happen, but it seems, the report that I received was that there's some sort of unusual configuration or setup for the DTE substation in Ferndale, that replacement parts aren't, in stock, and that you had to cannibalize other substations, and that added to the replacement time by at least 7 to 8 hours. So certainly we would expect, as customers, that those parts would be kept in stock locally in case of such an event. The other question I have is that I've lived around here for pretty much my entire life and have never recalled seeing so many transformer fires, wires down, melting wires, just sort of unusual incidents. Is that just my perception, or is 2011 an especially rough year for DTE in southeast Oakland County?
more transformer failures this year than in recent years.
And do you equate that just to load, or is there something else going on?
I really don't think it's from load. The load hasn't increased significantly.
And what causes wires just in the middle to start to melt and transformers to catch fire?
A number of things it could be. Depends if you're talking about primary or secondary. There's a number of factors.
Well, what would be some factors that we could either advise citizens about or encourage DTE to be more proactive about?
Well, in this area, most of those areas that we were talking about are what we call 4,800 volt delta areas, where we have rings in the primary and in the secondary. And secondary is a banked system, and if you have one transformer fuse blow, the other transformers that are banked with it have to carry the load. In some cases, you could have a number of transformers connected together. If you lose several of them, all the load goes on the ones that are remaining in service, and in that particular case, you can get some secondary that will overheat. And similar, you can have similar problems with primary.
I have a follow-up question on that. So I think I'm pretty clear that the equipment on 9 Mile Livernois is more recent in the last 10 years with the transformers. But what about the canister transformers on poles located in the neighborhood? That is sort of what Scott or Councilman Galloway has been talking about, and your technician about there seems to be more of those failures. So are we aging those in our neighborhoods near 8 Mile in the southwest portion, and does DTE need to look at the age of those as well?
Is that part of your routine studies or your?
It's not really my job function. I'm a planning engineer.
Can you include that in your follow-up audit?
We will get your response on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Councilwoman Baker.
I just have one question. It's on behalf of my parents, because thankfully, although I live less than 2 blocks from the substation, we had power pretty much the entire time, which meant Mom and Dad were sleeping at my little house rather than me at their big house. But and I imagine it's the question that a lot of residents have here tonight, so maybe we can start the dialogue or head it off a little bit. Is there any sort of, I mean, if you lost the entire contents of your fridge or perhaps your freezer, if your power was out for a number of days or sort of off and on, is there any type of relief for residents who found themselves or businesses out of a lot of money?
What we'd like people to do is we do have a claims group within DTE, and we would like people to go ahead and follow the process where they would contact us. Call 1-800-477-4747. Follow the prompts and request an affidavit. It's called a claims affidavit. Then that'll be sent to the home. It can then be filled out and returned. That's the best way for us to keep track of who's, it's a system where it's logged in as the request comes in, and then we can keep track of the affidavit numbers and so on, and it allows us to manage the process.
Would you say the phone number again?
1-800-477-4747.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that real quick, I was just informed by Councilwoman Baker that form's not available online.
I didn't see it online.
Oh, you didn't see it?
I saw the phone number online, but not.
Yeah.
Oh.
No, I don't believe that form is available.
Okay, and now, next question, people are going to ask, do you have to have receipts? Which people don't keep receipts for food generally.
I would still just encourage people to go
Yeah,
ahead.
okay, that's your answer?
And related to that, do you have a policy in terms of the amount of days that you weren't getting power? Do you get a rebate for that at all, or is that?
That's on the Michigan Public Service Commission website also, electrical outage credit. And that can be accessed online at our dteenergy.com website, or again, calling the phone number I indicated and requesting that form, and then that would be submitted and so on. Again, I know it can be cumbersome, but it allows us to track, who's requesting it, and provides that mechanism that we can manage it.
Is there a mechanism in place to get more than the $25 credit? I know some folks lost significantly more than that.
At this point in time, there's just the one.
The $25 credit's all business, individual, multifamily, whatever it is, it's one, huh?
That's a standard credit, part of the Michigan Public Service Commission program.
Additional questions of council, or anyone else up here for that?
I look forward to them coming back, though.
I actually did find this online at dteenergy.com/residential customers/problem safety outage center reliability credit request form.
And they all thought you were playing solitaire.
Up here.
If there's no other questions, I know you promised to sit through the called audience in case there are specific questions that that audience members have, so we appreciate that. Good. I'm going to sneak in, because what the heck, I'm the mayor, I get to do it, an item D, only because I see our county commissioner here, and I like to try to give him an opportunity to speak during presentations if he likes. So, County Commissioner, do you have any update from the county for us?
Mayor, thank you very much. And while I'd be tempted to talk about the power outage that I endured for 3 solid days, they talked about rolling blackouts and how we got power for a while and then it would go off and then it would come on. We were blacked out for 3 solid days. There is a hero that I want you to know about, sir, that you may not be aware, but the last night, Friday night, talking to Julia Hall, there was a lot of folks coming in and they needed food. So I called Chris Hickner, who's involved with Little Caesars, and Little Caesars Corporation folks donated 10 pizzas to the seniors and the folks that were at the Kulig Center. So we appreciate everything that they did. Little Caesars came through for us. And Mr. Mayor, as you know, we did talk with George Miller, the Public Health Department, Oakland County Health Department. He's part of Homeland Security, and as you, I think, talked to the police chief, evidently whenever there's a power outage in a city, the county wants to know. We're supposed to let Homeland Security know, so I don't know if that's a police chief job, but they did let us know that. And also, Mr. Mayor, you did a great job, and let me just say that. We appreciated you being on the ball and online, and those robocalls were a master stroke. So I feel really good about having you, Mr. Mayor, doing a great job for us over this time. Very, very briefly, we are introducing to the Oakland County Commission a complete streets ordinance. If those of you who are interested, and I know you all are, this would be the time to begin to lobby. This is the budget time for Oakland County. Commissioner Dave Woodward from Royal Oak and myself have introduced this resolution. It'll go to the General Government Committee, and it'll be coming to Oakland County Commission. There is a chance we could pass this. I believe I have one Republican supporting this, and we'll try to get some more. So go ahead and start the process. If the Woodward Avenue Action Association or the 5 Cities Alliance or anybody wants to start to lobby, now would be the time to do that. I also very briefly want to share, as you all know, last week, before the power outage, there was big stories about your county commissioner pleading the Fifth, and I want to share with that the story. As you probably know, when Ferndale's Clinical Relief was raided last summer by the Oakland County Sheriff's Office, a number of people were arrested. Those court cases have been widening themselves through all of the courts. I was asked by Commissioner Razor up in Royal Oak to come up and simply talk as the mayor at the time of the city of Ferndale how and why we went about doing the zoning and creating the space for these dispensaries to come in, because as we all know, it was 3 years ago that the state of Michigan passed medical marijuana in our state. In Ferndale, I believe the vote was not just once but 3 times we passed that, and it was over 70%. Upon getting ready to simply talk during this case about our role as council members in Ferndale, it was Assistant County Prosecutor Beth Hand who basically threatened us by saying that local elected officials could be at risk for criminal prosecution in our role if we were facilitating the distribution and availability of medical marijuana. This, of course, is absolutely not true. I did meet with the city attorney and other attorneys who advised us that as city elected officials, we have legislative immunity. However, because of the frightening threats, basically, that we got, I was advised to not discuss the trip that I took to Clinical Relief to tour the facility. I am not ashamed of that. I'm very proud of that, as you all know. I did tour it. As a matter of fact, it was in the Detroit Free Press, so it'd be pretty hard for me to deny that I was touring that facility. But we as a council welcomed this organization in, but I felt the need, based on the attorney, to plead the fifth, and so I did. But while I think it was an embarrassing situation with the headlines, it's not me that's embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for Oakland County that we are thwarting the wishes of the people who have voted time and time again that they'd like to make this product available for people who are ill and who have doctors. But I just want to share that because it's pretty bizarre to have a headline in the Tribune about your county
Did you
commissioner.
receive an apology from the prosecutor's office?
No.
I didn't. Don't wait for it either.
And you know what? This is
They're not
going
gonna
to
do it.
wind its way through the courts, and then the sad thing is that the lawyers are getting rich. You know, it's all sorts of people going through the courts, and Barbara Agro, a 71-year-old grandmother, was prosecuted. I'm not worried. I'm not scared. I've supported this issue for many years, and I'll continue to do so. And the irony is that there are open dispensaries all across Michigan, in Lansing, in Flint, in Ann Arbor, in Detroit, Macomb County, but right here in Oakland County, we're not going to allow that to happen. So thank you for allowing me to share that. We already heard about the pub crawl. Mr. Wallenweber, it's okay. I'd rather go to Peru myself. But it starts this Friday, and another irony is that the third annual pub crawl, 8 years ago, Councilman Galloway remembers the electrical substation caught on fire, and that year's, you guys remember, that year's pub crawl was done in the dark, but it went on anyway. The fourth year, we had torrential rains and flooding, and the pub crawl went on. So
You can't stop Ferndale.
no, you can't stop a pub crawl. So whether it's cold or raining or snowing or the electric goes out, the pub crawl will go on. Show up anytime at Boogie Fever between 6:30 and 9 p.m. You can get your badge. We'll have a good time.
I
And
will
thank
be
you for
there.
your time.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Thanks for coming to our meeting.
All right, now is the time for call to audience. As I think most people know, call to audience is 30 minutes now, more time if needed at the end of the meeting. I ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes or less on any item that's not on the agenda. Please state your name and address. And again, you are welcome to make any opinions, comments that you like, but we'll only respond to specific questions that require an answer. Otherwise, it's your 3 minutes, and they start now.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you. My name is Dennis Hepner. I live at 7 Sisters, Flowerdale. I too was up without power but for 4 days, but I'm not going to complain about that. Tonight, I want to talk about a bright spot. With every disaster and every catastrophe, there's always one bright spot. During the great blackout of 2011, one place stepped up to the plate, and that would be the Judy Community Center. Judy Hall and her staff and the senior volunteers, along with our mayor, opened up the center for a Judy Center. They fed all the people, getting Gatorade, ice water, whatever they needed. They came in for a relief from the heat and needed a place to sleep during the hot nights. I don't think anybody was turned away. They even had a special room for people with pets. They had the stage pool too. They even had a problem and had to bring in a huge generator, but they came through. I think they deserve a big hand for a job well done.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Matt Nowatzek, 226 East Oak Ridge.
And I'm Joanne Wilcock, 1615 West Marshall.
Well, we're here today for the second annual Ferndale Kickball Challenge. This started last year as I guess kind of a joke between the Community Foundation and the Fern Care about who was probably more inadequate associated with their athletic skills. And from that, we've kind of snowballed and we're trying to expand it to incorporate more boards so that the organizations in the city are more interconnected on a personal level as well as, brainstorming to figure out how we can help each other.
Okay, this year our Kickball Challenge is going to be on August 13th. We have 4 nonprofits that are going to be involved. It's Ferndale Free Clinic, Ferndale Community Foundation, Friends of Ferndale Library, and the David M. Smith Fund, which is part of the Ferndale Youth Assistance. We also have one city team that we have gotten together. Melanie, you played last year. You know what fun we had. Even though it was 95 degrees, it was very warm, but we had a very good time. This year we're just changing up a little bit since we do have 5 teams actually. And what we're going to do is ask everybody to bring stuff for picnics. We can share and picnic afterwards. We're going to start at 10 in the morning.
10 in the morning, you said?
10 in the morning will be our first game. You can notify us if you're interested in playing on a specific team, because it's friends and family. That does not have to be just the boards, but friends and families that would like to maybe be on a specific team. Charging $20 per person to play, and they'll also get a T-shirt that will represent their team. You can email to me at jwilcock, which is WILLCOCK, at ferncare.org, or to Matt, which is Matt Nowatzik, MATT.NOWACZOK at yahoo.com.
I'll email you.
We also
Go to the Facebook page. We have a Facebook page like everything else.
Yeah, that's the next thing. That's a kickball. Ferndale Kickball Challenge is on Facebook, so you can go over there and check as well. We are limiting it to 20 players per team. So if you do want to play, let us know. I know Melanie does, and I know she will be there. I'll tell you what, she kicks butt too. She is really good. So she's definitely a ringer on the team. But we're very much looking forward to it, and we will have more information. We would love to have people come out and cheer. We're going to do a 50-50. And I think it'll be a lot of fun, and bring families, and they can cheer us on as well, and have the picnic afterwards.
Councilwoman Baker has a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
Matt and Joanne, would you clarify a little bit about where the money goes?
That's right. The profits that we have on it, that less the T-shirts, is going to go to the 4 nonprofits, and we split it evenly between them.
Yep.
And Julie Hall has been very gracious to make sure we have 2 fields, and she's going to help us with it as well. But it should be a lot of fun, and a lot of fun for people to come out and see.
Thank you.
And Mayor, real quick, we did want to throw out the gauntlet. We're always looking for referees, and so if by any chance you have some interest, we've heard that perhaps.
You don't think I can play kickball? Is that it?
That's really what we're aiming for. None of the 4 boards wanted you on their team, so we.
All right, you're lost. You're lost.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, come on up. Yeah, good evening.
My name is Robert Joe. I live on St. Louis.
Yes.
There was a question asked about the grocery reimbursement. It specifically says on their website that they do not reimburse for groceries. So the gentleman is asking us to forward it on to a claim center that I believe that he knows is going to deny that claim. If he doesn't know, I don't know why they would have very specific on their website that they do not and they will not pay for groceries.
Mike, do you know if groceries are included in part of the loss?
There was a meeting today amongst the people involved, and we were asked if let people know they can just go ahead and submit.
They can submit grocery claims.
Groceries are not clearly identified, but I would have to convey the message that people are encouraged to submit a claim.
Okay.
Well, groceries are specifically classified on the website, and they're specifically said that they are not allowed to be claimed.
Well, if they're making an exception for us, we'll allow it.
Absolutely. Mr. Galloway asked a lot of questions to the gentleman from DTE. I don't believe that they answered pretty much any of them. They evaded every question that he asked. I would like to know when this report that they say is coming out, when that is due to be out, and if that's going to be available for public consumption.
Yes to the second part, and I don't know the answer to the first part, and I don't know that Mike knows. I know that the internal review is still going on. Mike, I don't know if you know a time frame or not.
The event just ended this weekend,
Yep.
so we're just starting the.
But yes to the second part, we will make it available to residents.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Julia Music, 497 West Troy, and I'm sorry I don't have 100% of the details on this event because we started it yesterday in the middle of the day, and I just got confirmation a few hours ago. But Fern Care is seeking individuals to join our Heart of Detroit race team on August 6th. Runners and walkers can join us for a 1 mile, a 5K, or a 10K race. And all the proceeds that we earn from our race will or from our walk-run team will come back to Fern Care. And Fern Care Clinic is an organization in our community that serves
uninsured and underinsured individuals free of charge. There are 3 postings of this information at this moment, because again, I got it completely confirmed about an hour and a half before the meeting. So it's on Facebook on our Ferndale discussion, or Ferndale 115 has it posted on their website and on their Facebook, and then Ferndale Patch will have it later tonight. And of course, if anyone wants to find me on Facebook, my name is Jillian Music, and I am the only Jillian Music in Ferndale. So send me a message if you want to get involved, or just find those links and sign up for our team.
Thank you, Julia. Welcome. Appreciate it. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir. Good evening to the City Council. My name is George Chapp. I live at 966 Alberta. You can blame my property for the additional evening of the brownout. It was where the power line from DTE actually came down. I'm not here tonight to hash over the events of the last several days. It was unfortunate, but I do want to point out that there's a distinction between the actual utility and the city's response. And I did want to say publicly, incredibly proud to live in Ferndale. Incredibly proud of our fire department. They know me now on a regular basis. I've had to call them 3 times in the last 3 weeks with the same line that's come down in my backyard. I think I'm on the verge of having, knowing them on a first name basis. But I did want to say the police, the fire, the Kulik Center, everyone in the city has been incredibly helpful and very cooperative. My concern in particular has to do with, it was mentioned by Councilman Galloway, with the actual wiring in the city itself. I can say that in the last 3 years I've lived with the current residents, almost without exception, there's been the canister transformers have blown out. We've had wires that have come crashing to the ground, melting, electrifying fences. I have a 20-month-old son. So not to say that gives you a different perspective, but the reality is that the line coming down 3 times in the last 3 weeks, my concern is going to take someone getting hurt, someone getting killed before DTE takes action, which is very clear and obvious. The grid needs to be fixed. So I'll take my $400 loss on my groceries, but I want DTE to take my $25 and put it toward fixing the grid, because that's the real problem. And it's not just a problem in Ferndale, it's a problem in the entire southern part of Oakland County, also in North Detroit. So that is really my concern. It's not about money, it's not about any type of retribution. It really is addressing a public health and safety issue. And hopefully the persons who are here from DTE will be willing to address that, and hopefully we can get that matter resolved.
Your address, just so they can write it. You got it? Okay.
966 Alberta. Thank you very much.
Thanks, George. Good evening.
Dennis Augustin, 1550 Spencer. On this outage here that we just had here, it was about 8 years ago, you said that substation burnt up? Well, even though it was over on Dover, I'm on the east side of town there, and I was one of 10 houses that was without power for about, well, they got it up for during the middle of the week and that, but it was very limited usage. But we had to do without power for a couple of weekends and a couple of days before that, okay? Now, my question to you is there was an anniversary that came up here. Now, these storms raise a lot of heck, that's no doubt. But why doesn't DTE replace the wires that catch on fire? Why do they just leave them up there? Wouldn't that short out? You know, I mean, if they're bouncing around and we've heard them over in our neighborhood, they pop, and we can see the sparks just fly. All it's got to do is just get real windy. And okay, but they never replaced the burnt wires in my backyard. 22 years ago to the day last Wednesday. Okay, it's never been done. And that we watched the fire on our walls. My wife made a comment. Somebody had a backyard barbecue going pretty good. I looked out there and I said, "That ain't no backyard barbecue. That's our utility lines on fire." And it was during a thunderstorm. It was a bad one.
Yeah. Address us, please, okay, unless you have a specific...
Oh, I got a couple of them. The next one is okay.
But please address us, okay?
You guys collect money for the bills from the people to pay the electricity. How come I've been looking at a utility pole laid down on the ground for 12 years out front of Maverick Steel across from Wanda Park? And one for about 8 years on the corner of Saratoga and Woodward. Those poles cost some money. They cost money out of my pocket and everyone in this room right here. I have called DTE. I've been on the website.
Dennis, please address us, okay? Do you mind?
Nothing's been done.
Dennis, yep.
Look, I've called the city long before any of you guys were on there. These poles are still laying down there. These are situations that are still going on and have not been addressed.
I respect that.
Okay? You know, you guys, you talk about your maintenance records, you talk about doing maintenance, and all we've heard in Ferndale out of this past week is that you guys used used parts. What happened 8 years ago when we had a substation burn up? Why didn't you use the new stuff? Why didn't you put new stuff in there? I saw them working on both substations, and yet we're having, just like Council said, we're having a lot of problems. You guys still want your money when we got to pay our electric bill. My apologies, Council, but I'm a little bit ticked off with this stuff. It's things that I have brought up to DTE on the phone, talked to their office, got on the internet, went on their website, and nothing's been done. Okay?
I appreciate it.
Nothing.
Yep.
Now, I talked to Byron and I talked to Matt about the city sidewalk stuff. Mark your sidewalks, okay, because yours are badly more shifted than mine, and I'm going to have to pay to have mine replaced. Put some ink on that stuff up here.
Yes, sir.
One moment, please.
Nope.
Charles Denoyer, 505 West Troy. My concern is the transformer failure. Some transformers, majority of transformers are filled with oil. I believe, and DTE can correct me if I'm wrong, they have PCBs in them, oil that's not good for the community. In this power failure, did any of it leak out? Do we have any chance of these chemicals getting into the ground? My kid likes to ride her bike over there. Concerned about EPA exposures from chemical spills.
Mr. Palchesco, do we know that?
Transformers are filled with mineral oil. Many years ago,
Could you maybe just so that everybody can hear you?
Many years ago, we went through an extensive program to test for PCBs. Right now, transformers, mineral oil is commonly used in transformers. Anytime there is a leak, we have a rigorous program we go through to test just to make sure. So there are steps we take whenever oil does come out. We follow various standards to test to make sure that there's no PCB.
Thank you. Next, welcome.
Alan Madeline, 514 Ardmore Drive, and I'm glad to meet you all. I came home last Wednesday night to find that the power was out. I came home late, and I had a lot of offers of people to stay with, but I have cats that don't travel well, and I had to go to work the next day. So my concern, of course, was, you know, and I say that only to put a human face on it. One of them is 18 years old. She's heavy, she's long-haired, and so I was at work all day, you know, wondering. Luckily, the house gets a lot of tree shade, so it wasn't that bad. So I'm upset with DTE because I have my suspicions about what's what. But I'm glad that you two gentlemen are here and bearing our wrath, such as it is. So my question really is, it made me think that I ought to try to get a generator. And I'm just wondering if, since we have these gentlemen here, if they could provide some information about if you're going to get a generator. My house, for example, is a typical 800 square foot, 2-bedroom, 1-bath on a crawl. What type, what size? Do you recommend a brand? How do you hook it up? Does DTE provide help hooking it up? Are there ones you can run inside your house that are safe? Do they have to be outside? In which case, how do you protect somebody from swiping it? I mean, all these kind of issues. So I'm just wondering if you'll allow them to take a second.
That's a good question. Do you give guidelines on buying a generator, or is that something that a resident would need to
I saw some hooked up to people's houses. They had chains around them, you know.
Or even is the fire chief still here? He may even have some.
Temporarily.
Okay. Yeah. And I don't see the fire chief. He may have had some input on that as well.
Okay, good. Oh, that's it. Thank you.
You know, I know that if you're going to try to feed the electricity back directly into your system, you got to have an electrician do it and not try to do it yourself. So if you're going to run a refrigerator with extension cords, you know, having it outside might work, but some people come up with ideas to feed the power back in through the system, and there's a you got to have a licensed electrician.
We have two local companies in town that do that. Okay.
You want to plug them?
McChesney Electric and Premium Electric.
Buy local if you can.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Yes, sir. How are you?
Mark Blackwell. I'm at 986 Alberta, a couple doors down from George. And I don't really have a question for DTE because it doesn't sound like they were really prepared to answer any anyway. My question, though, is we seem to be bantering around the ubiquitous comments like "you can well imagine" and stuff about heat, and I think that we are unnecessarily drawing cause and effect. Nobody is sort of taking a serious look at maybe it's not just the heat. I'm 53, and I've seen 90-degree temperatures every single year of my life just about. And you don't see the power blowing out in communities all over the country. Why is it Ferndale? What's different about Ferndale? How come, you know, and of course a high temperature is going to, if there are flaws in the system, heat's going to find, you know, it's going to, you know, seek those things out, and you're going to have power outage. But that doesn't mean that the heat necessarily caused the power outage. 2 years ago, we had power lines just west of my house on Bowfield just falling out of the sky onto the sidewalk, setting grass on fire and laying across steel fences, and it was just luck that nobody touched the fence and electrocuted themselves. And DTE came out quickly and replaced it with what I presume is the same wire, because 2 weeks later they had to come back out again because those same wires burst into flames and fell to the ground. So my question is, who's going to look into seeing whether or not maybe we're not getting the whole story from DTE about the supplies and the kind of workmanship that we're getting out of them? Maybe we should have a third party do an audit on the equipment that's being used so that we can get an honest answer. Because I don't know about anybody else here, but I'm still punch drunk from watching that whole BP, British Petroleum crisis management nightmare. And I'm hearing the same kind of stuff here. You know, George, I don't know if you think you're going to get $400 for your groceries. You're not. He said, we encourage you to fill out the form. He didn't say he's going to give you $25, and I would bet he's not. DTE is not going to give you money for groceries, but they're going to leave here making everybody feel like they're going to get money for groceries. That's what people are angry about. It's not that the power went out. We can handle that. It's the dishonesty. You see people out on the street, you know, one person says, oh, they told me the power's going to be back on tomorrow between 9 and 11. Then the power goes out, comes back on, and somebody the next day says, oh, they told me the power will be back on tomorrow between 9 and 11. Then 3 days later, the power goes out on Sunday, and somebody says, you know what, they told me the power's going to be back on tomorrow between 9 and 11. It starts to sound like maybe somebody's just giving you a story, like they have a little book that they're reading from. And we're not getting honest answers from people. That's what angers people, dishonesty. I mean, we've been through a lot in the city, and we can handle power outages and storms and all that. Just tell us the truth.
And to your point, by the way, Mr. Blackwell, about a third party, I just want residents to know the utilities in Michigan are regulated by the Michigan Public Service Commission. So if you have comments or suggestions like that you want to address to this independent third party, MPSC would be the appropriate authority. Good evening.
Hi, Kathy Putnam, 637 Flowerdale. I too was affected by the power outage in Ferndale, and this is the third time in 1 year. I rejoiced when the power came back on early Saturday morning. I threw out 3 bags of spoiled food. I went through numerous D batteries to operate battery-powered fans. So I went to the grocery store yesterday to restock my fridge, and then lo and behold, at 7:20 approximately last night, there was a brownout. So I tried getting through to DTE to no avail and heard the same line 9:30 to 11:30 several times throughout the power outage. I figured someone needed to be contacted. I tried the non-emergency number for the fire department, received an automated phone message, so that's understandable. Then the non-emergency number for the police, and the desk sergeant informed me of a down wire. He told me that they had fielded hundreds of calls during the course of the power outage and recommended I attend the city meeting. I then called the mayor, so Mayor Coulter, I was one of the citizens who called you and left a message. My grandpa was the 12th-term mayor in a small town in the UP, so I asked my mom if he used to receive calls from citizens, so I didn't feel too bad calling, as I was very frustrated at this point. I also called the Free Press and Channel 4 News and considered calling Ruth to the rescue today. I did not. And my question is the council able to contact DTE when this occurs and bypass the automated system to get prompter service or truth and honesty, as I also really would like truth and honesty from DTE. I feel like we as citizens tried to take this 3-day outage in stride, but when the brownout came last night, it was very disconcerting. So what can we do as citizens if this occurs again as far as getting and receiving info from DTE to get some answers.
And so specifically to that, we were in contact and communication with DTE. We had regular conference calls with them. I think that part of the evaluation that I talked about, that the city needs to look at what it did right and what it needs to do better. We as a city are not great at communicating to our residents. Frankly, we don't know what all your phone numbers are. We don't have, I don't think, the most efficient ways to communicate with our residents yet. So we did our best. We tried some new things. We did the automated call. We put it on cable. We did what we could. DTE did what they could. But frankly, I think in our evaluation, communication is going to be something that we need to look at going forward so that we get the information that DTE is telling us to use sooner.
Okay, because I don't have a laptop, I have desktops and a cell phone because everything went out. So then I was relying on other people to get information.
Yep.
So I thank you for everything you've done, and hopefully we'll receive some answers.
Thank you, and I did get your call, but my answering machine went down, and then they got jammed up, and I was going to get back to you, but
I wanted you to know I was very disconcerted at that point. Thank you.
I'd just like to follow up on
Yeah.
her comments with a question directed towards DTE. Several residents have asked me, what type of communication plan does DTE have for communicating with customers, residents of Ferndale? It seems like it's largely electronic based. Your power outage maps are nice, but of course, if you don't have ability to charge your phone or your laptop or turn on your computer, it doesn't work. So, how could we do that better in the future, or what are resources that are out there that we might have overlooked?
One of the things that we tried on Saturday night in preparation for the power outage was to call people in advance. We call them predictive outbound dialer calls, pod calls. And so some calls were to have gone out to people, notifying them that we were going to be interrupting the power 2:30 in the morning until 6:30. So, but we are always looking at other ways to improve communication. We recently got on Facebook and got involved in Twitter. So as a company, we are looking at other avenues to be able to communicate with customers. It very much is something we want to, improve upon.
If people have cell phones that maybe don't have the telephone numbers for, or their telephones require electrical current, or their phones, laptops aren't charged up, how would they get information from DTE Energy during an electrical outage?
Again, we're looking at different ways of getting better at communicating. So we're factoring all this in.
How did you guys do it before there were computers?
We used the phones that we had a log of the phone numbers that people had on our system, and then just made some calls. But the pod calls is a relatively new concept, so it's something that with the advent of computers and the ability to make hundreds and hundreds of calls in short notice, that's something we've been using lately. But you're right, with more and more cell phones, and sometimes we don't have a phone number on record for a person, so we are still looking at other ways to improve upon that. If I can also just make one mention too, and that is that we do have a system that we're also working to improve upon, and that is we do provide a PIN number for the police department and for the fire department. When issues come up, they have a PIN number that they can call and get some information, but that's another system we're currently evaluating and looking at.
And I do believe the communications between your field people and our commanders, our two chiefs, was regular throughout, and so I don't think that was an issue at all. We were getting information from you on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And even though we're getting close to the 30 minutes, I know this has been an unusual week, and I'm going to allow for whoever is still in line to talk, and then anybody else, if you want, I'll reopen call the audience at the end of the meeting. But for you, 5 individuals, thank you for your patience, and I'll allow the 5 of you to speak. Yes, sir. Step right up.
Hi, I'm Scott Maloney. I own an ice cream store called Treat Dreams.
Yes, you do.
We've been in business less than a year, so we're still in that startup phase. And we were affected like a lot of other businesses with the outage. For us, it meant making 2 runs a day to get 100 pounds of dry ice, so $200 a day times 4 days of doing it. We've got our utility bill for DTE that's due this week for $1,600, so we'll pay that because I know what it's like to not have power, and I want to have the power. But I just ask respectfully, DTE, for business owners that have been affected, if they could proactively keep us in the loop in terms of what we need to do. This is the first I've heard that there is a reimbursement channel. I mean, I'm going to be buried for the next couple of weeks just trying to, get our inventory back to where it should be. And anything that they can do, I know they've got a lot of resources that can reach out to businesses affected. I'm sure they've got a list of all businesses affected. So if there's any way that that can be done, it would be greatly appreciated by small business owners. And then a second thing, I just want to, on a positive note, I just want to, for the record, publicly state just how supportive the residential community was in Ferndale and the business community. I mean, I think I had 8 restaurants reach out to me that had power, wanting to know if I needed any freezer space. On day one, I probably should have taken them up on that, but thinking it would be a, one-day event, I thought I can, just maintain it. But after every day went by, I was kicking myself for not taking up on it. But the community was fantastic. So thanks.
Thanks for sharing that. Good evening.
Council. My name is Jason Muck, and I live at 2104 Pinecrest Drive. First, I want to thank the city. I think they did a great job in responding to the problem with the cooling center, and I got the automated call on Friday night. Very much appreciated. I also want to thank Ferndale Patch. I kept a lot of, I was in the loop a lot from the news from Ferndale Patch. So thank you very much. And the only thing I want to add to the different conversation that we've had here today is that this has been a persistent and enduring problem, it appears to me. I moved to Ferndale in 2004, and we can predict a power outage in our neighborhood by the hottest day of the year. And I grew up in a very small town. I lived in Lansing and East Lansing, other parts of the metro area before coming here. And the power interruptions that I've experienced here have been very unusual and not consistent with other places that I've lived. And I think there's a pattern of what I perceive to be either faulty equipment or old equipment. Perhaps that's an error. But I was disappointed to hear that no one knew the age of the transformer, particularly when you're able to date the cable to 1969, have that very specific information. So I would really actually encourage the City Council to look at this, look at it as a pattern, as opposed to focusing on this as a specific incident, and really looking at the way that DTE has been failing the customers of the city over time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your comments. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Ray Crusette. I live on Pearson. I want to thank Council for all the good work you're doing. I wanted to ask a question of DTE, so I'll address it to you and you can ask them.
Okay.
I was wondering what the load capacity was of this substation and what the average load was. Typically, you don't build a substation to match the average load. You build it 25% above or whatever. So I was wondering what that padding was for our substation, and how does that compare to cities like Birmingham, Royal Oak? How much padding do they have?
Okay. And
Other cities that aren't experiencing this type of
That's a
problem.
good question, and I don't know if, Carl, if you know the answer to that. I know you talked about stagnant capacity, but do you know specifically for this substation?
Yes, I do.
Come on up to the mic just so that we can all hear you, if you don't mind.
I'm going to quote 2010 figures for load because we haven't gotten through the summer. It could go up. The substation had, in 2010, it had 20.9 MVA.
MVA?
Yes, megavolt amperes is just the technical term. The maximum loadability for the substation for the summer is 26.4 MVA. So you have a bit of room to grow.
So 20.9 is what we had maximum
for the load in
2010, and the 26.4 is the maximum capacity.
Right.
I mean, is 30% excess capacity typical, or what does Birmingham or Bloomfield have?
That's in Northwest region. I can't quote every. I look after 31 substations, but I don't look after those.
Well, is the 30%, sort of buffer or safety zone typical?
It varies a lot. Some are at, many of them are less, and some are more. It varies.
What would cause it to vary from one substation to the next?
The load and what size transformers were installed initially, how much the load grew since it was installed. There's all kinds of factors. load growth. Some areas grow faster than others. Some are industrial, some are residential. Residential is slower load, and it depends on the load, the rate of growth.
And would you consider the 26.4 MVA satisfactory for the area served by our substation?
Yes.
And what did we experience the night of the brownout? I mean, so...
I think, I'm going to make a bit of a guess here. I think the brownout was due to one of the circuits. We had limited capacity in one transformer, so we were trying to unload that transformer to prevent it going offline. So we were trying to offload that Ferndale substation. So we transferred one circuit to an adjacent circuit, a Woodside circuit. And when we did that, that particular Woodside circuit then was loaded more than normal. So in that case, I think that's where the voltage, the low voltage came in. So it was either, we had to make a choice. We had the opportunity to provide service. It wasn't great service, but it was better than no service. So that was the choice we made. And that's why it was low voltage in that particular case. I'm not sure if that's the answer to every low voltage.
Is there a national standard for that you use as a point of reference?
Yes, but I don't think you would apply that in a storm. Generally, it's plus or minus 5% of nominal, and nominal being 120 volts. So we go from 114 to 126. That's where we like to be.
Thanks.
Thanks, Carol.
Maybe I could suggest in the survey that they're going to prepare for us that they could include some data on substations in Oakland County, installed capacity, and then peak load, so that we can compare those for ourselves, just to see if we rank compared to other cities.
That'd be helpful to know. Thanks. Thanks for your comments. Good evening.
My name is Nancy Johns,
Hey, Nancy.
and I just want to know, what's the difference between like the furnace running in the wintertime and the air conditioning? That's gas.
Can't hear the question.
Nancy, we can't hear you. You got us talking to the mic.
Making our town, you know, we're building bigger things and more, we're using more electricity. And what is the difference between a furnace in the wintertime?
But Nancy, most furnaces run on natural gas. Not all, but most.
Yeah, but don't we plug them in?
Just for motors.
I know I'm not very smart when it comes to this stuff, but is it because everybody wanted, you know, there was a time when people didn't even have air conditions, and it's like we're gonna die if we don't have it. I don't have one, but that's what I wanted to know is what's, you know, because I know the ice storms, you know, took it out, but that's what I want to know about the air conditioners. Have these computers and air conditioners, and now just not one in the bars, you know, down here. They got, what, 20, 30 televisions in one bar. Is all this adding up to it?
Well, I would have said, yep, we're all using more electrical equipment, but I did also hear our DET gentleman say that our load has been sort of flat for the last 5 years. So apparently, we haven't had a significant increase in load, according to DTE, in the last 5 years. Certainly, from when you and I were younger, we have, and no question.
Yeah, I'd go back to the horse and buggy, you know that. Anyways, okay.
Thank you, Nancy.
That's what I wanted to know. It wasn't a very, you know, because I
appreciate
I
it.
put the candle on, but I got tired pulling out the refrigerator and unplugging it. And then I put a candle in the kitchen sink, and it cost me $350 to get a new garbage disposal this week.
Oh, no.
I messed it up good.
Oh, no. All right. So you're going to be our last call to audience for now, and I'll reopen it at the end of the meeting for others that didn't get an opportunity.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Dave. Something really totally off the wall. My name is Ray Willis. I live at 530 Wanda, and recently as I've circulated a petition and collected signatures, I've talked to a lot of residents, and I've heard a lot of complaints and, of course, a lot of compliments about the city. And most of these complaints, I find that people could probably just go to the specific department in the town and have their problems taken care of. But the one that seems to come up recently, not recently, over and over again, is, I heard it this morning. I was talking to somebody at Beaumont, and they said, oh yeah, Ferndale, low speed limits, lots of police, giving out tickets. And I explained to them why we need lots of police and the problems we have. But as I've also heard that people will say, I don't go downtown much because it's hard to get into town and get out of town. A lot of traffic lights and slow speed limits. And I've told some business owners and some other residents that I would come and talk to the council. And what I've come up with is Public Act 85 of 2006. And there was an article in Troy about Troy, and what this is it requires cities to conduct studies to properly have speed limits set at the right speeds. I don't know if we've looked at this study. The article also says that about 50% of the cities in Michigan haven't looked at this. One of the big concerns I find is between West End and Woodward, the 25 limit on 9 Mile. People would just like to see that go to 30. Also, the extreme number of electronic traffic lights seems to be quite a bit. The one on Wanda on my street seems to be kind of silly. So I was just going to leave the article with the city, volunteer to help to do surveys if needed, and maybe the traffic control officer could take a look at this. It seems that I've seen this work in Clawson, in Madison Heights, and also in Sterling Heights. To change the speed limit on Mound, traffic facilitates, flows really well. You seem to think that you'd want the people to not be sitting behind traffic lights and wasting gasoline and time. So I'll leave that with everybody else.
Clerk will take it. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. All right. I'm sorry, that's the end of called audience for now.
Okay.
I will reopen it again at the end of the meeting, and we have a pretty light agenda from now on, so it shouldn't be too long. Thank you, folks from DTE, and we'll be in touch. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the consent agenda. Consent agenda items are things that we consider routine, and they are enacted in one motion unless anything is removed from the consent agenda. Let me read the consent agenda for the record. A is the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting held July 11, 2011. B is the approval to adopt a proclamation of congratulations to Gage Products for 75 years in business. C is the approval of the contract with Georgie Concrete of Detroit to replace sidewalk and handicap ramps under the 2011 program. D is the approval of the concessionaire license for Scott Maloney of Treat Dreams, 22965 Woodward Avenue, to operate an ice cream cart on city sidewalks on West 9 Mile Road between Woodward Avenue and Planavon Street daily from 12 p.m. to 9 p.m. E is the approval of a tentative agreement between the City of Ferndale and AFSCME Local 1917 DPW supervisors. And F, approval of the bills and payrolls as certified by the city manager to be paid subject to the review of the Council Finance Committee. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I would move to adopt the consent agenda as stated.
Support. That is moved by Baker, supported by Galloway. Are there any questions or comments about the consent agenda? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council members Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon? Is that from the table?
Yep.
Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda is adopted. Now moving on to the regular agenda. Item A, consideration of appointment of Brianna Fritz to the Beautification Committee for a term ending December 31st, 2012. Is there a motion?
Is this a mayoral appointment or a council appointment, City Clerk?
It's mayoral.
Mayoral appointment with the approval of council, correct? So I am recommending Brianna Fritz to the...
I would happily move to confirm the appointment of Brianna Fritz to the Beautification Commission for a term ending December 31st, 2012.
Support. And just a quick comment.
Yep.
Brianna is getting her master's degree in public administration, and I think she's definitely a qualified candidate to serve on one one or more committees.
Thank you, and I think we're going to see your application for another committee as well. Yep. Any other comments on that? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Council members Piana?
Yes.
Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. Regular agenda item B, consideration of extended license agreement for Dino's Outdoor Cafe. Yeah, Christine, you want to tee up that item for us?
Thank you. In conjunction with many events that we have in downtown Ferndale, Dean Beck of Dino's has always been a willing partner to host back patio area events in conjunction with it. A lot of times they are nonprofit charity-oriented events as well, such as in the past with the Dream Cruise and raising funds for local charities, as well as the Ferndale Chamber of Commerce property showcase last year. In preparation for this year, it was something that a while back Dean and I discussed. It would be easier if we tried to kind of outline what dates specifically would he want to have an extended patio area, and try to do this in conjunction just with one license agreement as opposed to coming back additionally every single time. He has worked with the Liquor Control Commission to look at the layout for that, and has received approval from what I have received from the City Clerk's Department regarding that. And the dates that he is looking for is August 13th through the 22nd, and then September 15th, which is in coordination with our third Thursday event in September. The cafe agreement does reflect the cafe agreement that he already has in place for his existing patio area, so it's very similar in terms of that makeup and setup. We're talking about a total square footage that has been extended to by about 940 square feet. And the way that I calculated, because there's no set rule on this in terms of how to calculate a rate for that, we have typically done the sidewalk cafe rate of $1.50 a square foot, which is for this entire season of the cafe season. Since this is only for 11 days, I've prorated it accordingly based on the 11 days. So that's how I came up with the amount. In the meantime, since this was presented in your packet, the fire department has taken a look at this, the fire marshal, in terms of the layout. And I don't know if everyone received just a revised floor plan. It was just today that we were able to get that. Okay. No. I will pass that up.
Are these copies for everyone?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll wait till everybody gets a plan. So based on the floor plan, we actually had to modify the layout in terms of what was presented in the original packet. We originally had the 4-foot clear walkway going closer to his building side, but in order to have clear walkway through the middle of the alley for fire access components of not only his door, but also 2 neighbors' doors, as well as the fire escape that would drop down on the pad that's existing. We have set it up so that there would be a clear walkway through the middle, 4 feet, as well as 4 feet from any of those emergency access points. Actually, the fire marshal recommended a minimum of 3 feet. We typically encourage 4 feet for more pedestrian-oriented accessibility. So we've modified it, we've bumped things around. It's not to scale based on the drawing that you have in there. Our engineers were not available today to do it based on scale, so this was in a short term, trying to make that modification. So in speaking with the fire chief, the only thing that you'll see on your diagram that isn't shown is that there's a second door next to the far door on the right, and they're pretty much right next to each other.
A couple of questions. So the whole alley is going to, you have located here in a blue box, it says potted chain, and then it runs, sort of prohibits access or limits access to the cafe area.
On the edges.
On the edges.
Yes.
But there's nothing in the walkway.
No, it's not in the walkway. No, it's not. It just looks, I'm sorry, but this was not my drawing.
It's
Yeah.
a movable thing.
Right.
But then the orange entrances there, those are just going to be gaps in the potted chain? They're not going to be gates or something like that?
Right, no, not a gate, but they will have attendants at the gates based on LCC rules.
And then, I've just noticed and received a number of comments from citizens that, a number of our sidewalk cafes are starting, even though they're maybe 4 feet, starting to make it very difficult for wheelchairs and strollers and stuff to get through. That's become a problem with a business on Livernois as well. So it looks like you've got a lot of these tables that are really pretty, and I understand that it's not to scale, but that are really pretty close to this 4-foot walkway. And, how it seems to me that we're going to have chairs and, things encroaching on that 4-foot walkway. How are we going to make sure that that doesn't happen and that people can easily get through here?
Well, I think what we can do on the first day, in terms of setup, is have the fire marshal and myself and Mr. Dean Bach out there to review the setup at that point. And if there are any modifications to the number of tables, chairs, et cetera, we can make that modification on site. Knowing that this is meant to be somewhat a closed event area specifically for those dates, thinking of it as a special event area, but still allowing access for people who need to get to one side or the other for a business potentially.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions of council? Did the city attorney, did you review this agreement?
Yeah, the form of the license agreement is approved as form for consideration. The diagram I just saw.
Yes, obviously. Okay.
But it does, my understanding is the fire marshal's now.
Right. Have the neighbors been apprised that this is happening, the neighboring businesses? Have they?
They have not about these specific dates, but that can be something that we can do after this fact if it's approved.
It seems there's really nobody affected right now.
No, well, Club Arts is closed right now. The only one that's affected, but they really have not been affected in the past, is really the theater. They've always, come in and out as needed.
Okay. Cool. Then a motion would be in order.
I move to approve the license agreement as submitted with Dino Drop Incorporated for the extended outdoor cafe area use on the pedestrian alley for August 13th, 22nd of 2011, and September 15th of 2011, and authorize the mayor to sign the agreement.
Moved by Lennon, supported by Baker. Any additional comments or questions of council? Of the audience? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmembers Lennon?
Yes.
Piana? Yes. Baker? Yes. Galloway?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. Thanks, Christina. Regular agenda item C, consideration of concessionaire license for Carrie Hubbard of Taco Mama. Who is someone introducing this item?
I will, Your Honor.
Thank you.
And the only reason that we place this on the regular agenda as opposed to consent, because it is a fairly straightforward concessionaire license application, is that the DDA did have objections to using the on-street parking as requested.
Okay. Let Christina go.
My question is, have you come up with a solution to, other than,
Sounds like there might be one.
is there, the on-street parking?
Yeah, I wanted to hear from Christina.
Christina, do you have a comment on that?
I'm not a-
It says this was city-owned parking lot.
Yeah.
Say on-street parking.
I was concerned with the on-street parking space. Those are the most valuable parking space to have in a downtown area for consumers, and to have it actually filled with a vendor that's coming in, I think that's going to not only impede business for businesses who are here throughout the year, whether it's 365 or a few less. But, I think that we have to look at another location. Whether it's in a public parking lot, I would, if they wanted to move over towards a public parking lot, I would be definitely open to that. I think those are less prime in terms of an on-street, but it is going to be somewhat dependent on that vendor's idea of where they would like to be as well. One of my recommendations was really actually to look at the property itself, because right around West Belt Market, gosh, talk about some old days. The handicap parking spaces that are at the back end of the alley are actually on private property. So they could actually strike an agreement with the property owner itself to be able to use those spaces. They're not city handicap parking spaces.
Is Carrie here, by the way? I don't.
No.
Well, are you going to work with this individual to find them a spot, or?
Well,
I mean, I don't want to approve a license that I don't know where they're going.
Our recommendation is to approve it as requested by.
Up on that, in those parking spot?
I'd be happy to work with them, but I wasn't aware that this was going to.
Yeah, I went back through all of the former council agendas and looked at where all the other concessionaire licenses have been located, because this is the fourth one in the last 2 meetings, and so if you give me a minute, I'll recap hours, times, and locations, just so you know. So Jack's Tacos is Saturday and Sunday from 12 to 4 in front of the Ferndale Radiator parking, which I saw them out there this past weekend.
I did too.
Motor City Franks is Friday to Sunday, and 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Rust Belt corner, and that's the one where they have the partnership with Rust Belt.
Yeah.
Then there's the Detroit Underdog, which is Monday through Friday, 11 to 3 p.m., and then 10 p.m. to 3 a.m. And they requested 3 areas, which is at 306 West 9 Mile in front of Huntington Bank, 195 West 9 Mile at the Ferndale Arts Building, and then in front of the Greenleaf Bodywork business.
And we gave them Rust Belt.
In front of Rust Belt as well. So the Taco Mama would be also surrounding the Rust Belt, also Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, 11 to 3. So we will have 3 carts surrounding the Rust Belt at the same time. So 2 hot dogs and 1 taco stand.
Well, the taco stand's at Ferndale Radiator.
The Taco Mama is the applicant of the, yes.
Jacques Tacos is at Ferndale Radiator.
Yeah, that's down.
Right, and it's on private property, as well as then the other carts are on sidewalks.
I've got a question for Christina. Are you?
I'm done.
Okay. One of the things that we strive for in our downtown is the intermixing of businesses. You go to more than one place. We don't want things to be self-contained, where you go and you sort of, it's unfortunate timing, but sort of like the Borders model, where you go and you get your book and your music and your coffee and your lunch all in the same place. We want people to branch out. Are we, by approving, multiple licenses for basically the same area, are we essentially creating that one-stop shop that might discourage people from discovering some of our other businesses?
Potentially, to some extent, but it's also, there have been people in the public that have been asking for this, as well as the vendors themselves that are inside Rust Belt Market, where they wanted something quick. But when you do compare a vendor who's coming in just for a weekend or a day compared to somebody who is here every single day, I'd really want to encourage, that we support our local businesses who are already here. It's not to say that I'm against vendors by any means, because I think they add, a little bit of excitement and on-street life, and you see them in a lot of big cities, and they do kind of add that vitality to the city. I think there's a balance that probably has to be struck here. We're getting hit with them all at once, unfortunately, to be able to come back and say, do we have a plan for that? No. But could it be looked at in terms of scale and scope and how many and where do we want them? We could definitely start looking at a plan for that.
I appreciate that, because that was going to be my question is, we never had any, and so now we're getting them, and it's kind of cool. And so I don't think but we're going to reach a point where it's not as cool.
Right.
And we're not there yet, I don't think, but we will, and we're going to want to manage this. And so with you folks and in partnership with us, we do need to sort of look at this as this becomes a more attractive.
And they may weed themselves out possibly as well. You never know. I mean, it's just how the market is.
Yeah.
So,
Scott?
One of the places where they have the most, vibrant food truck scene is Portland, Oregon. And when I was out there for an NLC conference several years ago now, they had a whole parking lot filled with these things. There were dozens of these trucks offering all sorts of things from, crazy Asian fusion type foods to coney dogs, but they're all lined up, and it was like almost like rows and rows of food, Taste of Ferndale type thing. So I'm not sure that's necessarily a model that works for Ferndale, but having some sort of area where they actually do congregate, I think, could create some sort of real synergies and perhaps fuel different types of entrepreneurism, spin-offs, and that type of stuff.
right.
And
that is one of the things that you'll see happening in malls is that malls have gone to some of these vendor formats as well. So you have these little carts that are popping up in the middle of, the shopping malls and so forth. And they're finding it as a way to diversify what's already within the mall itself. But it's also possibly a way of growing someone into a more permanent location. But you do have to kind of look at who it is that's coming in and how do you want to really, establish that as a plan to make that change and get them to move up in the into a more permanent location.
Now, Christine, I have another question for you, which is, this license is from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m., is that correct?
Correct.
So I am sensitive to this issue of our parking downtown, especially on weekends, but isn't it a bigger issue in the evening than it is from 11 to 3?
Not on a Saturday.
Not on a Saturday?
Saturday is our busiest shopping day.
Have you had any input from any of your business owners about step vans are tall, and you will basically be putting someone else's sign in front of the organic food market?
I'd be very concerned about that, and especially if it was a competing type of business as well. So
I
as
guess I'm
to
just
the
much more
location.
comfortable thinking about it on the side of the building than directly on 9 Mile for numerous reasons, giving our parking problem, just sort of the navigability of that corner anyway. It's where the buses pull in and out. It's where pedestrians, unfortunately, jaywalk back and forth a lot. It's a corner. It's a tight turn for a car in the first place to try and get into that parking lot. And then to add a tall sort of physical and visual obstacle to the corner. I like food trucks. I'm so glad we're getting them in Detroit. My colleague and I are ready this week to go down to the one, downtown in Campus Martius for lunch. But the sort of physical blocking of a business that's here every day, paying taxes, paying utilities, I think there might be a better spot for it.
Okay, now I guess I'm confused. Is this being proposed to be parked in the Withington lot or on 9 Mile?
On 9 Mile.
9 Mile.
In the first space in
So this
front of the
map we
organic
got
food
is not
market.
actually
That
correct.
doesn't mean anything, does it?
That was her proposal.
First proposal.
That was her proposal, and the city
That was
changed it.
going to kind of
That's in the right of way too, isn't it? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at a Google map from the satellite view, so I have a better understanding of where this is located. And I believe let me go back through here. The Motor City Franks is in front of the Rust Belt on that corner, and the Detroit Underdog is also at one of the corners. Could be, right?
Yes, on the opposite corner.
On the opposite corner, and then what Taco Mama is asking for is the first parking spot right in front
Front of organic
in front
food.
of the organic food spot. So we would have 3 carts flanking.
Right, and at a very tight, I'm more concerned about traffic right at that corner. That's a huge visual barrier. It is unfortunately a high pedestrian traffic corner, people running back and forth to the bus stop.
We've already had we've already had a lot of department heads out there looking at the alley itself to adjust traffic flow within that alley to accommodate Rust Belt Market. So we've actually changed the flow of direction that cars are supposed to be coming in and out, and making sure that there's a clear path for emergency vehicles during loading and unloading hours. So you really can't place someone in the alley as well. So that would be out of, I think, an option that's not available to us. And I don't know if in the parking lot itself within Withington, if that's going to be something that the vendor is going to want.
Actually, the vendor is amenable to, I think her proposal was the first 3 spaces in that city lot, in the Withington lot.
According to this. Yeah. That was the first choice.
Understanding that she would have to pay for lost parking revenue.
I think that was her original suggestion, was to be behind the Dollar Castle, right? Ish, somewhere like that. I know.
I don't want to have that conversation.
The other point that I'd like to make is that the city, with the DDA and Western Market, are now going through intensive study to put on-street parking for bicycle racks, and that hasn't even been done yet. And so for us to give up another space for a vendor when we are trying to do something very unique with even bicycle racks, and we haven't even gone through and proven the safety yet, which you are confirming those things now. With the TIA, I would just say that I'm hesitant to open this up to the parking space. When we have an ongoing project, something similar for parking for people that we are trying to confirm and satisfy the safety requirements. So,
I guess my issue isn't the one parking space as much as it is the visual and physical impact on pedestrians, cars, and businesses on 9 Mile.
Well, yeah, that's important too. So.
Do we need to revive?
And for me, let me just say, I want to help accommodate this person if we can, because I think it's a good thing for our downtown. So I'm open to either working with her to put it somewhere else, or we could try this as maybe not a year, but as on a smaller period to see if it indeed impedes traffic flow and blocks visibility and that sort of thing, is to shorten the length of it perhaps. I'm open to one of those, but I'd love to be able to work with her in some way to encourage her to do this.
I prefer the first option. I think there are even visible parking spaces on the street over near Boogie Fever. There are places where people will naturally see you coming and going from the Rust Belt, but you won't be sort of right in the middle of the hubbub, which I know is probably the best for business, but I just don't think it's best for the flow downtown. I wouldn't vote for it as it is, even though there's nothing technically. I don't think we've made a motion yet. I wouldn't vote for it as presented, I guess I should say, but I would really like to see if it can be reworked.
So you're proposing still an on-street parking spot just further north?
On-street or Withington.
I mean, I think this is a great opportunity to sort of stretch the concept of what is the downtown, and by sticking everybody right on top of each other at the center point of our city, doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. I mean, probably not of interest to her, but we could let her park in the, the old American Legion Hall's parking lot all day long. Now, that's not a great location, but it would get people maybe, thinking further down the strip. And there must be areas closer into where she wants to be that aren't so centrally located and create problems. Because I agree. I think
Lot or Sunset.
Well, Withington Street is a viable option to look at.
So could we postpone this tonight and have her talk with who? DDA and you, or would that be appropriate?
Probably Byron.
Could we approve it contingent upon working with Christina and Sherilyn and all the proper licenses in order?
I think, this is the first one we've done. I'd really like to have the applicant explain to us a little bit about what she anticipates as far as, traffic in and out, what her demands are. Is she going to be driving to Western Market every 10 minutes to get, or every couple hours to get food? How does one of these trucks operate? What's her plan for controlling foot traffic? I mean, liquor licenses are obviously a lot different, but just really put those people through the ringer regarding
yeah. And what if someone's parked there at 11 a.m. when she wants to pull in?
Yeah.
It's not a reserved space, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what is the will of council then? I'm hearing maybe postpone for 2 weeks?
I'd be happy to meet with the individual
express
this week.
our desire to help her succeed, but just, you've heard the comments here, and Sherilyn, you as well. Work with her. Hopefully this will be back on our agenda in 2 weeks. All right. So, not hearing a motion, we can move on? All right. Regular agenda item D, consideration of a resolution in support of regional transportation planning. Councilwoman Piana.
Yes, I'd like to introduce a resolution on seeking council support for a grant opportunity that has come to our attention through the Federal Transportation Authority. And this opportunity came through the work that I have been doing on the Transit-Oriented Development Task Force. We have partnered over the past year, since September 2010, with an elected official from each community, from Ferndale to Birmingham, and we have been making progress under our task force. We've received, I mentioned at the last council meeting, $50,000 to look at land use planning between the communities. So our coming together and collaborating has attracted attention, and we were it was suggested to our teams that we look at applying for this grant as co-applicant with the cities. So this is a livability planning grant through the Federal Transportation Authority to do an alternative analysis on Woodward Avenue from 8 Mile up to 15 Mile. And what the planning grant will address is looking at how transit, rapid transit, light rail, bus, rapid transit would enhance user mobility through creating more convenient transportation options for travelers. How do we improve intermodal connections and improve connections between residential and commercial areas? And how do we improve existing transportation choices in urban areas to reduce congestion and reduce congestion on existing transit systems? So that's sort of the technical look. What could happen on Woodward from 8 Mile to Birmingham, or 15 Mile on Woodward. And each city would be a co-applicant on this grant. So we have confirmed support from Pleasant Ridge, Huntington Woods, all the cities, Royal Oak, Berkeley, and Birmingham. Birmingham passed a very similar resolution tonight at their city council. I got a text from their council, their mayor in Birmingham. And so we are working very diligently together about how do we improve the Woodward corridor, and this is just another step in that process. It would be a 2-year grant if we were awarded it. So what I'm asking council tonight is to support a resolution in applying for the grant. That this is an opportunity for us to go in on a collaborative type of opportunity. I also think it's really great because we can also say as part of our revenue sharing that we're partnering with other communities, so this is just another feather in our cap of how we're doing that, and we're doing it in a very different way than what we have before. So this resolution is part of this resolution is just stating your support for applying.
Well, do you need a motion?
A motion would be in order to begin the discussion, if that is the will of council.
I would move that we adopt the attached resolution and authorize the mayor and city clerk to sign it.
Is there support? Support. Moved by Galloway, supported by Lennon. Discussion or comments from council?
I'm just going to read I won't read the whole resolution, but I'll read the last bit. Now therefore be it resolved, the City of Ferndale is committing to working directly with other local jurisdictions along the Woodward Corridor to seek funding opportunities to study rapid transit alternatives north along Woodward from the northern terminus of the light rail system currently proposed by the City of Detroit into Oakland County. So, any questions with the motion open?
I don't have any questions, just a comment that this is amazingly fast. I mean, from the beginning of in a good way, from the beginning of the very informal, multi-jurisdictional conversations that began really just between elected officials in a coffee shop in Berkeley, maybe a little over a year ago, or a little under a year ago, to this is a fantastic sort of legitimization of the fact that communities can work together, are building trust, and are building a common language to talk about economic development along a common corridor, in this case the Woodward Corridor. It's attracted the attention of the state, it's attracted the attention of the feds, it's attracted already money from the state. So the opportunity here, and I know that this is, of course, like all federal grants, this is a quick turnaround sort of situation, and I really thank Melanie for being our liaison to make sure that this got on our agenda. But it's just amazing to me that when you really, truly come together, have an honest conversation, and sit down and commit to working together to try and find a solution to a big problem, sometimes you can find a potentially really big solution. This is really exciting, really exciting.
I just say I agree, and I want to thank Councilwoman Piana for the great work that this could ultimately lead to. This is a great step, but it could ultimately lead to some important stuff, so thanks for bringing this forward.
I guess I do have one question. Do you know what the timeline is for the grant response, when we might know whether or not we've been considered? I know it's a national.
It's a national program. I'm going to say 2 months from the date of submit of the application.
So this fall we would have some feedback from the fund.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
Any other comments or questions? Madam Clerk, call the roll.
Council members Piana?
Yes.
Baker?
Yes.
Galloway?
Yes.
Lennon? Yes. Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. That item passes. Final agenda item is council liaison reports. Does anyone have any liaison reports for council this evening?
Are you reopening call to audience?
I will. Thank you. Right before call to council. After liaison reports, apparently, is when I'll do that. Yes, okay. As promised, I will reopen call to audience for anyone in the audience that would wish to address us this evening. Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll do call to council. Let's start with our police chief, Chief Collins.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Brief things. Number one, I would like to compliment the citizens of this community for their response in the blackout of this weekend. We had very little police activity as related to the blackout itself. We had no real disturbances. We had no real thefts. Many of the things that can go wrong in one of these type of situations did not go wrong. So I'd really like to thank the citizens for keeping the lid on for us in a time like this. The one thing I would like to reiterate to our citizens is that in the first few moments of a blackout or an electrical loss, please do not call dispatch unless there is an emergency. If there's wires down, obviously we want you to call. If there is some type of emergency that we can help with, that is certainly something that we want to help you with. But if you want to know why the electricity went out in the first few minutes of these type of situations, first, we don't know. And second, our limited dispatch staff really needs to be able to handle the emergency calls for people that really do need us, because that's when is the most critical time in these type of incidents. But overall, I think we fielded in the first 15 minutes over 150 phone calls of people just wanting to know why the power went out. So that really taxes our ability to provide emergency services when these, in the initial incident moments of these type of incidents. The second thing I'd like to say this evening is I would like to wish our interim city manager farewell. In the relatively short time that he was here, we accomplished many, many things. I enjoyed working with him very much. I felt he was a mentor. His experience, his vast experience, was very helpful to me in my relatively short period of chiefdom, and I really appreciated the guidance that I received from Mr. Wollenweber. So, thank you. That's all I have.
Thanks, Chief. Fire Chief, Chief Sullivan.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I too would like to say to the citizens, they did an excellent job. The mayor himself out there right on the front lines with us, and I think Julie Hall and her staff did an incredible job maintaining at the Kulik Center. Considering we really didn't have a in-place plan, everything rolled really well. Calls were down for us also. There was a few heat-related things, quite a few transformers on fire, but I think everyone covered that earlier. I called the audience. We did extinguish some of those, but we tend not to put water on electricity. It never goes real well. I too would like to say thanks to Mark Wollenweber. He too was a mentor on my part. Being a new chief, it was very helpful to have the wealth of experience and his calm attitude, and we were working our way through things. I'd also like to say we brought the new platform out. It's out in the parking lot. Councilwoman Piana took advantage of a ride up. Cheryl Lynn took a ride up a little bit earlier. So if any of you would like to go, now the nighttime ride's a little bit different. You got a different view of Detroit in the night. But we'll be more than happy to take you up as high as you'd like to go in case you're not a thrill seeker like Cheryl Lynn. No bungee jumping out of the basket, no. Other than that, I think we'll be working in the future, even though this was not a disaster management plan. People said, have we declared? We never declared anything for the city. We just handled it as a regular city function. So even though as many things going wrong, it went real well. So, thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Byron, see you back there. You want anything to report this evening, sir?
I want to thank Mark for doing a nice job, and he wasn't a mentor to me. I mean, I'm just as old as he is, so. But I want to thank him for bringing some calmness to things, and it was a crucial time for the city, and he came in at the right time, right person at the right time. And I want to thank the mayor. I think you did a wonderful job as the point person, and you allowed us to do our job, and you just were a real good PR person for the city.
Thank you. Thank you. Sherlyn.
Yeah, I just want to wish Mark well, and it has been a pleasure working for him, and in watching and listening to him, I feel like I have learned a lot as well. Again, right choice at the right time. It seemed like there was something else, but I can't think of what that was, so. All right. That'll be it.
For the last time, City Manager Mark Wollenweber.
Well, I would say I did mention earlier that we are working with City of Huntington Woods, hopefully toward an expanded mutual aid pact that would provide some direct benefits to us and to that city. And we presented them a proposal for dispatch services and lockup services. That's very attractive to them. So we'll be back to visit with April and Alex Alley, their manager, come mid-August, and then hopefully there'll be a council agenda item on that. I did want to say, with respect to the governor's various proposals and things, there's some changes to Act 312. There are some issues with respect to laws that have been put in place already that we've had to implement with respect to the only contract that's not settled, at least at this point. But we have moved forward by our participation with Unitrex We have taken the first step of putting our fiscal information, courtesy of Jane Marie and her staff, meaning Jane Marie and the one part-time person she has, online, so that we are transparent from that aspect with the governor's staff. We're building upon the list that the City of Royal Oak had an intern provide of cooperative ventures that they participated in, many of which we're also participating in. And if there is enough time between now and the end of Thursday, we will be working on the dashboard, whether we'll get it up in time or whether that will be one of April and Jane Marie's first tasks with SEMCOG and some of the other help, but I do feel we've made good progress on that as well. Again, I thank the staff, the council for the fun time that I've had to work here, and I'll come back and visit. I feel like there's so many neat activities going on here and so many restaurants that I visited before that are still around, whether it's Como's or Asagi or Villanova, etc. I'm going to try to come to the pub crawl because I am very partial to pub crawls, especially now that I can walk for it and not drive. So.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you
very, very much. Dan, Chris, anything this evening?
Very briefly, I'd like to join all the previous comments in wishing Mark his best wishes and safe travels as you proceed forward to Machu Picchu and beyond, and endorse all the previous comments regarding your leadership skills and professionalism. It's been a pleasure to work with you.
Oh, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Baker.
Just two comments. One is a neighbor of mine had a great idea that she put on my Facebook page during the meeting as I was congratulating Brianna Fritz on her appointment to the Beautification Commission. Carrie had a great suggestion as we were talking about receipts and being able to try and file some claims with DTE, as they've just invited people to do. So I think we should take them up on that invitation. Her suggestion was that if people do online banking, or even if you have your recent bank statements, you would be able to go back and take a look and see a Kroger or a Meijer or a Western Market or Ferndale Foods receipts. You would at least have the total. And so, over the last few weeks, that might be enough backup for DTE for you to be able to make a legitimate claim. So thanks, Carrie. Very good idea. I thought that was a bit ingenious. The other, there was a gentleman tonight who made a comment about traffic lights and wanting fewer traffic lights or wanting speed limits to be raised, particularly on 9 Mile. And it's something that I sometimes hear, but I was surprised that he specifically said, as you approach Woodward. And we've worked so hard to make our downtown safe and walkable, like we were talking about tonight with this food truck and what visibility might be and with pedestrians crossing the street. And this is a community that is walkable and that is pedestrian friendly and is not meant to just be blown through in a car. This is a community where you want to stop down, to slow down, to take a look at the businesses on either side of the street so that you know what's here. We don't want people just to drive through. That's what they did, when our downtown was dying when I was a kid, not when it was thriving like it is now. So stoplights and traffic lights are exactly what we need as we approach Woodward. Further closer to Hazel Park, maybe a different conversation, but the safety of pedestrians is been consistently Ferndale's justification for the way that our speed limits are and the way that our lights are timed, and I would strongly advocate to keep it that way.
And Mark, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, I wanted to thank the gentleman from Wanda for bringing that up and indicate that that's one of the activities, one of the associations we belong to, Traffic Improvement Association, that I think all the Oakland County communities belong to, is looking at that issue. There are some other federal rules with respect to signs and placement, but there is a toss-up between pedestrian, bicycle safety, and the requests of traffic engineers to some extent to move traffic through. And it's very important for the local community through our police department and agencies like TIA to struggle to find a healthy balance that provides both activities and protects pedestrians as well. And they've worked on, with our traffic safety officer, on a variety of events. They've certainly looked at, as was indicated earlier, the parking on street for a bike parking area, and they'll be looking at this as well for us.
Thank you. Councilman Lennon, I skipped you last time, but I remember you this time.
I want to thank the police, fire, DPW, Julie Hall, the recreation staff, everybody that pitched in and helped out the last few days. Remarkable job. Shows the character of this city. Also, in regards to the gentleman, Mr. Willis, TIA is going through the city right now. They have to realize, some of these speed limits are not, we can't set on the state and county, or those are state and county roads, and we have no say-so in the matter. And if my experience tells me, 25 years, that if you make the speed limit 25, you raise it to 30, they're going to do 40. So, I mean, there's a reason why that speed limit is 25 on 9 miles.
You weren't a cop or anything, right?
I have a little bit of experience. But other than that, Mark, I wish you well.
Thanks.
Okay, and we'll probably see you this week anyway.
Yep, I hope so.
Okay.
Thanks.
Well, I wanted to give kudos to my employer, but I think you're going to do that for.
He's on the list of people I'm
Okay.
going to thank, that's for sure. Yeah, okay. Councilwoman Piana.
I've got more than a few things, so bear with me. I wanted to thank everybody for coming out and voicing your concerns with DTE, and I thank DTE for coming to listen. And I think they have a plan to do an audit. We have a plan to do an audit, a lessons learned with our city staff, and come together about how do we make improvements. In particular, one that was mentioned tonight was internal communications, and this communications plan has been something on the city council goals and objectives for a year now, and I was wondering where we were with our website RFP to redo the website, because this has been something that is like on our third year of trying to get it going. So our new city manager, I'm going to stress how important this is to get this up and going. So I don't know if there's been any progress to be made with that, but I am offering myself to sit on a subcommittee, since I used to do web development in my former life, my former career before urban planning, and I like to offer my services in order to see how we can get this moving. And then I know we're working on a social media policy, and been partnering with a Wayne State student group to help come up with that policy, but I think you should just go ahead and create that Facebook page and just get going, and then we'll apply the policy afterwards. I think the mayor and I definitely thought that we needed the Facebook page going this weekend, since we don't have a website where we can do timely posting of information about what's going on. We could have had this other type of mode out there. So just wanted to say something about that. And then, you know, complete streets, that's all I have to say about speed limits on 9 Mile and Woodward. And then my husband and I will be at the pub crawl supporting the fundraising for the nonprofits, so please join us. I don't know where I'll be, but I'll be out there. I'll probably be Twittering. And then August 13th is the Green Cruise, and I'll be supporting that bike ride in the morning, and then heading on over and going to going to the kickball game. And what I wanted to say probably wasn't appropriate for out loud, but I wanted to say that we're going to win for the Ferndale Community Foundation, because we did Trouts because Ferndale beat us last year. So we're going to win, and so I'm very proud of our team. And then one last thing. I know that there were some emails going around about the electric vehicle ordinance, and Auburn Hills had passed one, and we're going to be pursuing electric vehicle ordinance for Ferndale, and hopefully we'll be able to coordinate something unusual that we have never done before, is an ordinance with our Ferndale to Birmingham community, so that we are an electric vehicle ready corridor. So that we can work together on those types of things. So that's all I have tonight, and I'm very, very thankful my energy is back on, because I lived in the Dale where it was a blackout for 3.5 days. So I understand everybody's frustration, anger, issues, large grocery bills, etc.
Councilman Galloway.
Just a couple brief things. I think it's always interesting how Ferndale in some ways, shows how great a city it is in times of challenge, whether it's a Headley override or a power outage or just a neighbor in need. And I think, again, Ferndale is not a great place because of its downtown or because of its innovative, programs. It's because of its people, and that's our best resource. And time and again, I think they amaze all of us here in the city, and we thank you for doing that. It makes our job and our department heads' jobs so much easier. And then wanted to make sure that on perhaps your exit memo, Mark, that we just brought to April's attention getting an update on the non-motorized transportation plan and where we are on that. We're excited about the bicycle corral going in front of Western Market soon that Councilwoman Piana has been working so hard on. But we want to get more bicycle infrastructure in the city as soon as we can. Someone today emailed me, they wanted us to be the Amsterdam of Michigan. So something to aspire to, I suppose. In some ways. Perhaps you've already gotten part there, right?
Was it Craig that emailed you that?
Yeah. I'll take the fifth. Anyhow, thanks for everything, Mark. We really appreciate it. We're going to miss you.
I did have one other thing I forgot to mention. The Michigan Municipal League put out a statement about the Economic Vitality Incentive Program, which is the new revenue sharing program, and October 1st is the beginning, I don't want to say deadline because it doesn't end there, it starts there, when cities need to put up their dashboard. And I was wondering if we have started that at all. Okay, so.
Yep, we're about 2/3 of the way there, and we may have a draft. Jane Marie has collected information I have. We saved it for who I think will do a wonderful job for the city, by the way, and I think you're fortunate to get someone of her caliber. But if we don't get a draft done before Thursday when I leave, it's high on her list and Jane Marie's to move forward on that.
On that point, there's some aspect of that dashboard that's up to the cities to measure. Is that correct? We talk so often about walkability and bikeability that it seems to me that some aspect of that should be on the dashboard. Google Maps has or no, is it Zillow? I forget. One of those two has a walkability factor.
Walkscore.org?
Yeah, something. I mean, there's a lot of online indexes that would be an easy benchmark or easy metric to plug in there.
All right, and I guess I will be last. First of all, Mark, again, thank you for your steady professional leadership. Much, much appreciated at a difficult time in our city. And second, I said it earlier that I wanted to do this, and I won't take too long, but the risk of thanking people is that you'll leave somebody out, but I'm going to do it anyway because there are some folks that really stepped up during this last week of the power outage that need to be called out by name, and so I'm going to do that. And for me, at the very, very top of that list is Julie Hall over at the Kulik Center. It is not in her job description to run a 24-hour emergency operation, and yet she did it with ease and professionalism. And her staff, by the way, Sean, Melinda, Barb, all the folks over at the Kulik Center, amazing job. Chief Sullivan, you were right there with her the whole time. You and your crew helped staff the place. Transported at least 3 people that needed to go to the hospital from there. Awesome. Used the truck as the backup generator one night. Awesome job. Chief Collins was also right there with us the whole time. You and your crew, your officers, outstanding job this week. Thank you very, very much. Byron, you had your hands full, and in fact, your systems were down, and yet you had traffic lights to manage and heat to get on and temperatures to control. Thank you and your crew for all the work that you did. There were some surrounding communities that just out of the blue came and offered their assistance. City of Hazel Park, we know we already love you, but their city manager showed up at midnight one night saying, if the Kulik Center's down, literally, here's the keys to our community center. Use us as your backup community, as your cooling center. Just wow. The city of Berkeley called Mark and offered their assistance. The mayor of the city of Southfield called me personally and said, do you need cops? Do you need generators? What do you need? Whatever you need, you got it. I mean, just unbelievable. Business owners stepped up in a major way. And Jack Aronson at Garden Fresh, when I called him, he first started going on about how much this was costing him and how much the generator it was going to cost and how he was worried about losing food. And he was not in a very good mood. So then I said, oh, maybe you're not going to like why I called you. Why is that? Well, because we got some folks over here at Kulik that are getting hungry and we could use some food and just like that, his answer, as always, is, what do you need? I'll have it there in a half an hour. Jack, wherever you are, thank you for stepping up in a big, big way. George at Como's did the same thing the next night. Como's came by the next night with pizza and spaghetti, not even asked, just knew that there was something going on and stepped up and helped feed the folks over at Kulik. Huge help. Through WJR, they connected us with Town Club Soda, which got us pop and Snapple and water over there, and just thank you for that. DTE, I know they took a lot of heat tonight, but let me tell you the other stuff that they did. They ran for 3 days a semi-truck over at Kulik and gave out water and ice to anybody who drove up and needed it. They also provided the backup generator at Kulik for the second and third day that we needed it over there. And their field personnel were amazing, around the clock, 24/7, working in that heat to get the power back up. So congratulations to them. Channel 4 ran a water station at 9 Mile and Woodward for a while, giving out water. Thank you to them. Little Caesars was mentioned earlier, but I'll say it again. They came by with food. And also, the media coverage was very helpful. I think it put pressure on DTE, first of all, to make sure they were paying attention to us. But they were also a huge source of information to our residents. So I want to thank all of the media outlets that reported on us. But I will single out Terry at the Patch, because I think because of the nature of what he does, he's an online source of information. Our residents really depended on, and we as a city came to depend on, Terry over at the Patch for getting out timely information. So thank you as well. And finally, just again to the residents who put up with all of the grief all week long and still found time to look after their neighbors, volunteer at Kulik Center, do all of the things that we needed them to do. Thank you very much. And with that, our meeting is adjourned.